There we go. It looks like we are live today on a Thursday evening for the Truth Proof live stream. And welcome, Paul.
Thank you very much, Les. Someone come round and I feel loads better today, and great to see everybody in chat. And all good to go. Speaking to a great guest.
Yeah, and I think this week we just got a little bit of a intro to play, and we'll show that one. Nice.
How good is that? Oh, did that, Les?
I wonder who did that one, Paul. Yeah. So there we go. Yeah. And hope you enjoyed that little intro. It just gives people a little bit of time, Paul, to get onto the stream as well. And if we have a look in the chat then and see who's in tonight.
Well, I can only see a small portion of people, so please.
Well, I can go through some if you want. Do you want me to
go on then. Let's see your seat.
Jane Bowery's in, Chalk Ice and Chips, and N Gamage, Billy GW, Jack 1948 UK, the Reverend WTF, and got lots. Rivington, the Pike Beast, Lee Roscoe. Thanks for joining us, Lee. And we have Jessica Pym is doing the moderating tonight. So if you've got any questions, just put them in block capitals, and then we'll get the questions read out at this end, won't we, Paul?
Yeah, and I'm really grateful that Jess is doing this. It's my daughter, if nobody knew that. I'm sure you did, but just a few more names before we get thrown into Chrissy and Slater, Diane Farrell, Sober Carper, Alex Thompson. Alex, a great supporter. Thanks for joining us on Cliffs, Alex. Disabled Welshman. And I can't even read it, but I know that's Pat Adams, right? And Frank Magnet, sorry.
I do, yeah.
And 40 and 23, and Lindsay, and I'm sure Linny's going to be in, and Peter's going to be listening and pretending that he's not in chat, but he will be there.
Well, probably people who came on the chat last week will have noticed you weren't very well, so you wouldn't have got a lot done this week, Paul, would you?
I've not done loads. I haven't done loads. Me and the Bobster have been out today, to be honest with you. We've had a full day of it today. And it's been, I have no complaints. No complaints. Everybody gets ill from time to time, don't they? So, you know what I mean? And if it's not me, it'll be somebody else tomorrow.
And,
so let's do it.
And I went for a job interview today, but I didn't get it. That time of year again. Yeah,
it's not Father Christmas again, is it?
Yeah, it is. I found out British Home Stores has closed down, so I didn't get the job.
Well, right. They're wanting Scrooge. Go for that one.
I'll get it. I'll get that one. Okay, then, without further ado, with all the hilarity over then, Paul, we'll bring our guest on for tonight and welcome to the show, Chris.
Yeah, Chris Meek. Chris, hello.
Hi, Paul. Hi, Les. Hi, everybody in the chat.
It's absolutely brilliant to have you back, honestly. And anybody who didn't see Chris a few years ago, Chris Meek, Scottish Paranormal researcher of everything unexplained. And we've been friends for quite a few years, and now we finally met up earlier in the year. He came down to Bempton. I've met up with Chris in Scotland, and what a great guy to be around. And a bit like Lee Nicholson. If Lee's listening to this, I don't suppose he will be, but totally underrated researcher, because you really throw your heart and soul into what you look into, Chris. So welcome to Truth Proof, Chris.
Appreciate that, Paul. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. And I know you've got a busy lifestyle. You've got your family to devote time to, but you also devote time to this subject. I'm kind of lucky that, not lucky, I wish I were a bit younger, but what I'm saying is I'm kind of lucky that I'm not working like I were, and I'm not bringing up that young family. So, I can throw a lot of time at it, but you're devoting quite a bit of time. And what's been happening recently, Chris, before we jump into it, because I want to step back to where it began for you?
Well, there's been a few things happening recently. There's been a recent link into the Blackridge black kind of Toblerone triangular UFO back in '94. There's another kind of link into that. I think it possibly is linked in for sightings there. But a few other sightings as well, different type of, but you've no probably heard for the last time, there's a cryptid sighting, a flying cryptid sighting, which was quite recent as well. I think it was only 2018, if my memory serves me correctly. Interviewed the guy, had him on, didn't want to obviously come on live for reporting things like that. You know what I mean? Some people don't because of the stigma involved. But some interesting stories there. I mean, there is a few kind of interesting stories.
And a flying, we'll do this one in a moment, but let's just touch on it briefly. A flying cryptid. So imagine, Chris, because now I've been to one at locations where you do quite a bit of research and this kind of place of strangeness.
Yes.
You've got a full 360. The views of this spot are just incredible. And all the things that happen around it. Just imagine if you had the time to spend
totally.
4 times a week up there. I think you're in a real hot spot. But before we jump into this Toblerone-shaped object and then the connections to the recent sighting or recent experience, what about childhood? Where did it begin for you then, Chris?
Well, there's quite a lot of things happened back in the day. I think most people have got, well, I perceived it as most people have just experiences with having a family and stuff. That's what everybody has a ghost story to tell or a UFO story to tell. And you just think it's part and parcel of every family, but it's probably not. When I was younger, initially, you're talking when I was maybe 4 or 5 year old, I used to see somebody. I can't remember this personally. I got relayed it from my sisters, my mum, and it used to totally freak them out. So I used to see a tall man in a dark suit. And I used to see it was a tall man in a dark suit with a bonnet, which would be a hat.
A hat, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's just a bonnet like a normal bonnet. That's what we'd call a hat back in the day. So my mum used to chalk this up to maybe a dead relative, like my granddad or something like that. But I used to see this person or thing quite regular and talk about it when they were there and in my bedroom and things like that. So that was probably the start of it. I can't remember that personally.
So obviously you're going to move into a few other things from childhood,
Yeah.
but why do you think this is not you personally, why do you think people forget these visitations from childhood? And I can draw on some of this from family members without naming any family members that people I know that have had interactions with. I think there were an amazing book written, didn't get credit it deserved, called Invisikids years ago. And lots of people have interactions with these. Well, they are invisible and to everybody except you, me, or the person involved. Why do you think we forget?
I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting thing because loads of kids see things and talk to things. And this might have just been that case. It could be just an imaginary friend. But it was that prominent. It did scare my parents, or my mum anyway, and my sisters and things like that. Because it used to be relating to it quite a lot. And describing this person in a certain way, it was like a tall figure with a dark suit on, with a bonnet. And I used to see it with dark glasses as well. And I think, as I say, my mum thought it was my granddad or something like that. But in regards to people forgetting it or kids forgetting it, I don't know. I mean, I think kids lose a lot of things over the years because it's almost like you've got I think anyway, kids have got a slight bit of ESP or extrasensory perception. You know when there's something wrong, you know when you've got a bad feeling about a place, or if something's like evil or something like that. You know what I mean? Kids can pick up on all the energies and things like that, and eventually when you get into your teens, it goes. But the things early on, it's interesting how they go after a certain age, because
do you think
remember back? Sorry, when you go.
This is, we can throw this out to people in chat, and block capitals, please, if you've got any questions for Les and to ask later, and Jess to put through to him. But do you think it's almost like this sort of cloak of innocence that children have, as they slowly get older and tainted by the world, that's lost? Do you think it could be something along them lines?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I think we're probably connected at some point to something otherworldly or whatever, but then we get to a certain age and it disappears. But when you look back at some of these things, you can remember your childhood sometimes. You can go past some of these ages. But you can remember maybe an instance when you're that age, but you can't remember these things.
Yeah.
But even if you look at more recent things as well, and even if you take it away from childhood, for example, people do this at an older age where they'll see things and they'll forget about it. I've done it myself. And it wasn't until I was going through writing down some of my accounts over the years when I was trying to backtrack and look at things. And there was things popping up in my memory. And it was actually just where something I seen on TV and it came to me. And I went to my wife and asked her to say, did I tell you about this thing? And she said, yeah, you wouldn't shut up about it for 3 months. And I couldn't remember that. I couldn't remember that thing. And it was quite a prominent thing for me to, we'll get on the story like later on, but it was for me to forget that story. It was, I mean, I thought it was quite crazy because it's quite a prominent story, I tell now. But at the time, I mean, I'd forgot about it. And it wasn't until I was watching something on TV and I'd seen something, I was like, I've seen that. And I went to my wife and said to her, and she's like, you wouldn't shut up about it. So I'd forgot that. I'd totally forgot that.
It's so strange. It's almost like a firewall. And I don't mean me as somebody who looks into this subject. I was going to say researcher, but I think we're all researchers. I think everybody in chat, it's just a word. Research is just a word.
Yeah.
If we're interested in subject, then we start looking into it. And we're looking in direction that we want to go because of his own experience, I suppose. But, you know, I wonder why we forget these things. You know, I Night People. And when I was writing it, I found it difficult to remember some things. It were almost like there was something stopping you remembering them. If that doesn't sound too crazy. And it really is hard. And I wonder why there's this firewall that's put up. Because none of us seem to be able to get any further or advance any further. And I don't think I'm breaking any new ground. And I don't mean that you're not, but I don't think I am. When I look back in the past and look what other researchers have talked about it, they're only dressing it up in different words.
Yeah.
We're just using different terminology, but I don't think we've advanced. We might be looking under different stones, but we still can't get no further to what it is that is actually interacting with us. Is it something from up there? Is it down there? Is it all around us and can just step in and out at will? None of us know. What do you think, Chris?
That's a big question. I mean, you're talking about like the ET hypothesis and things like that. I mean, for me, there's a few ideas. I mean, my ideas change what it could be, and yours have probably been the same over the years of what it is.
Yeah.
You maybe started out thinking it was like something for another planet or whatever, but when you get to the point where this links into so many different aspects of your life. So, I mean, when you look at it, it covers things like past. It jumps into past life regression. It jumps into after death, life after death. And then you've got the whole kind of interdimensional thing. And sometimes, if you look at it in an ET perspective, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I would agree.
And then you look at the thing where, I'll get to it in a minute, or the question in a minute. Like,
no, as detailed as you like, Chris.
When you look at it for an aspect where it's like a whole even phenomena, right? And you look at it, right? Let's say it's interdimensional, and there's maybe the hypothesis would be there's multiple different races, all vested or no vested in our well-being, and got their own agendas, and it links into life after death and things like that. But then you've got like that's kind of one hypothesis that goes on, and people can link into that, and you have maybe people have came from wherever that is, they come in here, and then they're supported by something else. But then when you look at all that as a whole, but then you get other stuff like you've got you look at the Catholic Church and you've got things where exorcisms, and you've got demonology, and you've got things like that. Like, where does that like pigeonhole itself into? Then you've got cryptids as well thrown into the mix, and where does that pigeonhole itself into? I mean, there was a couple of ideas that were getting thrown about where the recent disclosure process and stuff like that, and why they wanted to come out. And one of the ideas was, one of them was because it was like maybe time traveling and humans basically trying to warn ourselves or whatever else, and want to get too involved, but want to stop us from destroying ourselves, whatever. Right? We all know the kind of hypotheses are out there. Another one was quite an interesting one, was that they don't want it to come out. So there's a certain belief, if you look at the whole egregore and tulpa kind of belief, where we can basically make thought forms and create it, right? And create it. There's maybe something trying to come in from somewhere. And if quite a lot of people believe it and know it, they create it. And then it becomes more prevalent. And that's when one kind of it's even bashed about in between like military circles and things like that, which was like, right, Ross Coulthart had mentioned it quite recently. So you've got all the kind of things flying about. What do I really believe? I mean, I would like to kind of think maybe I follow quite a lot Robert Monroe's work, who
the out of the body experience guy.
So he done the Monroe Institute work, and the work that he did was basically developing out of body experiences, life after death. He even helped like the US government make the remote viewing program like more kind of streamlined and quicker with some of the hemisync technology it had to basically make the left and right brain more cohesive together. So with his basically teachings and things like that, he kind of fell into it by mistake in regards to it just started happening to him, and he looked further into it and developed something. So that was going for the mid-50s, and then in his books, went through the whole kind of stories. I'm actually going through the process of going out of body experiences, going into past lives, and then going past the past lives into when he was coming here from elsewhere. And then eventually, even further beyond that, I'm sorry if I waste the books for anybody, it's gone back to the source.
You're not wasting anything here, Chris. It's strange. I were talking, and you've got more knowledge on this than I have.
I wouldn't say so.
Yeah, no, you really have. The Monroe Institute.
Yes, yeah.
And I were talking about it to Linny and Peter last night and Alex with limited knowledge. So just be as detailed as you like.
So when he went back through like basically regression and then went past regression, he went through his past lives, and it was always like a kind of guardian there with him. He used to call them idents, which is like it was a name he used for them or inspect. Sorry, it was to do with, I can't remember the abbreviation for it, but it was to do with a kind of alien type thing. He just chalked it up to that these things were kind of guiding them and helping them through this process.
Did he think they were alien? Did he think they were alien?
He perceived it as that to start off with, right? But then it was like, so this thing was guiding him how to do it, how to help him, and kind of pull them forward with it, taking him back and show him past lives. And then it was like things was linked where maybe he had a past injury and he seen where he got it from. It was a past life, maybe he'd been killed in this kind of spot and with some type of weapon or whatever, right? But going past all the past lives, he then went to a point where he was like helping people who are trapped here on Earth in regards to like their souls or their ghosts or whatever. They were kind of caught in a loop. It didn't know how to go to the next part up. If you can imagine, there's all these different dimensions or whatever. So when he went further back in that, he actually went to another place before he was here. So he's came in to Earth and from somewhere else. So he was like on another planet somewhere, right? And it wasn't like a kind of bodied kind of spirit, but he went back to that, and then further past that, it was back to the source, right? So back to the kind of total source where everybody came from and everything. So his kind of take on it was there was an alien. He kind of put aliens into the mix as well, where all that was kind of happening. There was an alien presence as well, and there was people coming in people coming into the planet to help humans as well, although humans have been developed here and lived here, but other people were coming in from other places to take over like kind of bodies, or take over like basically as a soul basically, and then to help other people in humanity. But through that as well, when he was coming in, there's a thing he says when he was coming in, it was like almost like reading the brochure of what Earth is. And he went through the whole kind of aspect that to start off with, Earth was a farm basically, right? It was to this thing called lush, which was a kind of some type of energy or some type of byproduct that let's say humans to start off with, maybe started off with other kind of life forms, and he said the lot of a byproduct which was valuable elsewhere, right? It might not be something that we need. He put the analogy down. It was like cows and milk. They'll use the calves will use as much milk, and they'll get excess milk, and then obviously we take that excess milk. And so this was refined and refined and refined. There are you have a look at it online. I mean, anybody in the chat look at it as well. If you type in Robert Monroe and lush, there's two different statements come up. There's like one, it's in YouTube. I mean, the whole kind of bit for the book. There's one like 15 minutes long and one about 20 minutes long. And the one about 15 minutes long is when he's finding out about this and what it was, and about what the kind of the lush was. And he was really saddened after that, and it really kind of hit him hard. But when he went back in and found more description of it, it was all to do with when it was in a more refined form. The most refined form was when people show love and aspects of that, and that was kind of part of it. But it was almost like this was kind of set up in a sense, Earth, to kind of cultivate that to start off with, and then we've obviously came out of this as well. So it's almost like people are trying to help us transcend or something. That's one aspect there, and I'm kind of buying a wee bit of that. But then if you look at the works of Dolores Cannon, for example, she does a lot of past life regression as well. Well, she's dead now, but like she's the QHHT thing that they go past life regression, and it's like past that point, and they can actually talk to them or talk to beings linked to them who have looked after them and things like that.
Yeah.
And the main kind of story that they've came out with, and it's not just for one source, it's for multiple different sources that she's interviewed and done regressions with, like thousands of them. And the reoccurring kind of things that she put into books, and the things that was coming up was mainly kind of things like there was multiple races here, and it was basically like part of an experiment. Some are all actually doing different things. Some are actually looking after the human race. Some are in the process of having maybe doing some of their own interests, but supporting us as well. Some are they're not wanting to be a part of it, and they're kind of actually maybe a bit more malevolent. So there's a multiple kind of different things going on, but there is ones here who are trying to help us and things like that as well. So I quite like to buy into that idea. But then when you, as I said earlier on, when you look at all that together, and then you chalk up things like demons and aliens and cryptids and all that into that mix, where does that come into the mix? I mean, it's like there's all that kind of stuff as well. But just one other point as well. But what he did find out is, so when Robert Monroe was doing all this stuff, he eventually found out that the inspect friend that he had was him. It was him. So it was like basically him supporting himself through time. And
Right.
so I've just ruined the book for everybody, right? But it's really, really good, and they're worth reading. I mean, because they're so kind of you get an audio book.
There's one thing that shines through, and I don't think we planned on even talking about. Well, I know we didn't, Robert Monroe, but it's his work has followed through for decades and decades, and it's really respected. And even if you don't agree with it or don't subscribe to everything that he's saying, there's a lot of interesting points in it. I mean, you compare. Well, you didn't compare, but you used Dolores Cannon as well.
Yeah.
Were the similarities to what these two people were talking? Were they on the same path?
Yes. Well, I mean, Robert Monroe was doing astral travel, and then he was going back, and he was bringing us information back that way. Dolores Cannon was getting information through people going back through their regressions and then linking into some other intelligence. and that's where the information was coming from. So
What?
that's where, so it was like kind of linking, and she would find it because people were wanting the initial kind of thing with Dolores Cannon, QHHT. It was mainly going back through people's past life. I referred to Robert Monroe. Let's say, for example, he had a sore shoulder, and that's maybe where he got a spear put through his shoulder in another life. So Dolores Cannon would go back through people's past life regression, and she would basically help them. She'd find out if they had a medical illness or something like that, or she'd find out what the cause it was through past lives and rectify it and help it. And quite a lot of times it works and it helped. But she then found out she went further sometimes, and then she went back, and it was almost like people would kind of have like an abduction scenario would come forth, and they started talking about things, and then she eventually got to the point where she could actually talk to the beings like live through this person. And so there's all this type of regression stuff that go back and we talk to them, and a lot of this information would come through, and there was some information, parts of it, that came forth in quite a lot of different people.
Do you think, Chris, that, no disrespect to these two people you're talking about, but do you think we're only given little bits of the puzzle? Because nobody seems to to be able to join the circle, do they? No matter which genre of the unexplained you're looking into, and like you use the word pigeonhole, where do all these things pigeonhole? I don't particularly think that they do. I think it's all thrown in this paranormal soup that we're involved in. But do you think we're being tricked? Do you think we're only being given so much information? You know, you work so hard, you look into it, you're looking down this avenue and you're going to be shown this, and then you're just going to come against a brick wall, a firewall of nothingness, and you've got to go somewhere else. It just seems that nobody gets a firm answer.
Well, I think if you ask Bob Monroe and you ask Dolores Cannon, they would think they'd had all the answers. I mean, they would, because quite a lot of the stuff that they go through and they've researched and they've found through personal experience, they would probably turn around and I think they would say they know what's going on.
Yeah.
But in regards to the kind of whole aspect of the phenomenon, for looking into it as a researcher or podcaster or things like that, I always say, if like Jack Valet doesn't know what's going on, I mean, how am I going to know?
Yeah.
I mean, for the research.
Good. I just think at every point we're kind of being tricked, and maybe tricked too soft a word or too easy a word to use, but we're given a little bit of information. We're allowed to see a little bit of something. You know, the random witness who's got no interest in UFOs, got no interest in nothing, and then there's that unexpected adventure, if you want to call it that, and they see this thing that totally flips their life upside down. The thing that they can't tell anyone else, or if they do, it's the seeing is believing scenario, and you can't blame the people who say seeing is believing. If I don't see it with my own eyes, I can't believe you. But it doesn't take it away from the person that's seen something that's flipped their life upside down. But there's nothing else. They spent the rest of their life searching for it. Some of them do it in silence, watching podcasts and listening to people talk, reading books, and never get any further. But they're privy to this absolutely incredible experience, not necessarily sighting. And why are we not? Is it all by chance? Why are people not? I don't know. I'm asking a question that I can't answer.
I mean, to me, it's frustrating. It is frustrating, but I genuinely believe the only way to find like, fair enough, like the whole disclosure process is going to run its course or whatever. But apart from that, you're never ever going to find out truly, fully what's happening there. I really personally think that the only way to really find out about this is through consciousness, to develop consciousness. Or
I would agree.
I would agree. Like that. I mean, that's what's going to be the key to finding out the actual truth about it, is to actually delve within, know without. I mean, that's what I think. I'm not there with it, you know what I mean? I've got all the Bob Monroe stuff, and I've got like the whole, like, say DVD, but I've got the 2 download set of everything, which is, it's the whole kind of gateway process to go through it all, and it's all, but I've just not got time to do it, you know what I mean? So I need to spend more time doing it and focus on things like that. But in an ideal world, that's what I want to do, because I think the answers are going to be, you've got more answers for that internally than you're going to get extra. That's my belief anyway.
I don't even know if I've got words to describe what I'm talking about, but Truth Proof 2, Beyond the Thinking Mind, because I think a lot of what we're looking into does lie beyond the thinking mind, because once we start thinking about something, once we start connecting with something, we can kind of close down. It's almost that these things occur when we're least expecting it, when the mind is inactive, as in looking for the phenomena, we're actively trying to find proof of the phenomena. It comes to us on its terms, when we don't expect it to happen. It's kind of beyond the thinking mind. But jumping from Robert Monroe, we didn't expect talking about him, but I think it's a great subject to talk about. Unless you have anything else to add on to that. What about the shadow entities in childhood? What, your mum and your sister? Am I right?
Yeah. So we stayed in a house in a town called Armadale. We've covered some of these stories before in the past, but if any listeners,
we have. But
we stayed in a ex-council house or council house at the time. It was like a semi-detached, and we used to basically. I had three older sisters. My mother, my dad worked long distance lorry driver. He was away Monday to Friday. So during the week, anyone bumped in the night, you can imagine it was like three older girls in the house, myself, you know what I mean? You would think imaginations could run high, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you could probably chalk it down to and stuff like that. But there's so many things happened that that it wasn't that. And the main story I can remember, which I will get to in a wee minute, and when I went back to my sisters to kind of get some more information, that I kind of found a wee bit more. But the main kind of thing I could remember to start off with was we thought we had a prowler. We thought we had somebody sneaking about the house at night in the back garden, probably because we had young girls in the house and things like that. That's kind of what we thought. My back garden had a high fence one side and then a high fence the other side, with large kind of bushes and things like that. So if you're in the back garden and a lock gate, if you're in the back garden, it wasn't a quick exit, put it that way, right? So we used to, it got to the point where the dog would be barking at the back door as if somebody's out there. Sometimes even the handle went on the door, and the handle was like it's not the type of handle which would blow in the wind. It was a right strong spring, so you could actually hear the spring going in the handle.
How old were you at this time, Chris?
I can remember this. I must have probably been about 9 or 10.
Okay.
Right? So I can remember this then, about 9 or 10, maybe even 11. I mean, but that's what I can generally remember with this. It was a right strong spring handle on the door, and you could hear the spring going in it. So it wasn't a movable handle. That you had to kind of actually, it wasn't a blow the wind. That's what I'm trying to say. So that would go. The dog would be barking quite a lot, and you'd eventually kind of open the door, but nobody there. If the dog would be running out in the garden trying to get somebody, nobody there. Right? You could easily chalk that up to something, but it came that prevalent quite a lot of the times where you would hear the handle going, the dog would be going crazy again. My mum had phoned the police a few times, never found anything, never found anybody in the garden, and it got to the point where it happened. You could see it going. One time I grabbed the handle and I pulled. This handle wouldn't have moved on its own, and I pulled the door open, and there was nobody there. So that was kind of some of the main kind of things I could remember to start off with that. You could easily chalk that up to something not paranormal, right? And I agree with that. Another kind of incident happened when my sister came home from school quite early. I don't know if she was basically, we call it dog in school. It means like just like nipping off early for school. So I don't know if she was doing that or not, but she was in home early. At the time, she was like 15. Went into the kitchen and she was getting a glass of water or something like that at the sink. And somebody grabbed her from behind, as in grabbed her shoulder from behind. And she thought it was mother sister giving her a fright. And she turned round to say like F off or something like that. And there was nobody there. There was nobody there at all. And it was a grab. It was a total grab on her shoulder. And she got a really bad fright. She left the house, and she sat on the basically outside step until my mum came home. And then she asked her what had happened when my mum came home, and she explained to her about like getting the grab and all that kind of stuff. My mum told her that it happened to her as well in the house. She'd been grabbed and pinched and things like that, but she'd never really relayed it to anybody, because one, she didn't want to seem crazy, and two, she just felt a bit kind of embarrassed about it, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. So so that was kind of the, so that happened to mum, happened to my sister. And then there was one day when my sister heard my mum scream in the living room, and she seen like a black thing come out the floor and then pass into the adjacent wall as if it was going to the next door neighbour's house, instead of detached. So this like black thing came out the floor and then passed in there. My mum screamed, and that's when my sister came through. My sister used to have a bedroom next door to the living room. And another kind of strange story for there as well is when sister was a bit older, she had a boyfriend staying over, and he woke up during the night, and he basically said that he chalked this up to a dream. But he said in the kind of walk-in wardrobe she had, the doors were open. There was this an ugly, like troll type creature, right? And then he transformed into like a taller man and then disappeared, right? So he woke her up and told her this and said he just basically chalked up to a dream, but it was that prominent that he kind of woke her up and told her. And so he still can chalk that up to a dream. But all these kind of strange things, it was never an easy place. It never felt a nice place. It was always quite an ominous feeling about it. I couldn't sleep at night. I used to leave my light on. I used to dread like the hand getting slipped in to turn the light switch off at night and stuff, because I used to just have this intense fear of being in there at night. Just an ominous feeling. My friend as well. When you go,
sorry, no, go on. Your friend. Go on, we'll do this.
My friend as well. I can't remember this. My friend actually said to me, "Yeah, we were sitting in the living room one night, and some black thing shot across from the cabinet, and the cabinet door opened." And I can't remember that one, but he can remember it vividly as well. And we had cats as well, and they used to be like the two of them would be looking as if they could see something in the living room, and they would fall in it and things like that. So all the different times happened.
There's a trickster element, not just through this, but through everything. I'm reluctant to say sinister, but everything is designed to create unease. What's happening? And you said, like, said, a lot of this could be passed off as, I don't know, we could be imagining this. But for me, when you said that you grabbed the door handle as it went down, and opened the door, nobody could have got away. So,
no,
I'd say this to myself if I was saying this. So either I'm lying, or this happened.
Yeah.
And I know what kind of man you are, Chris, and you won't be telling recounting these stories if these things hadn't happened. So you kind of rule a few things out by that analogy that you said. I literally grabbed the door handle after it had gone down, or as it were going down, and we looked outside. There's nothing there. You've sort of cancelled it being some kind of a person, a man, a woman.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So all these kind of things happen through the years, and some of these stories I after I went back to my sisters and asked myself. One of my sisters kind of came through with some of the stories. That was like the one where getting grabbed and stuff like that, and the thing came out. The interesting story I knew about the house though, which I'd never forget, and it was one of the strangest stories I'd probably heard, and I thought it was like mega odd. Hadn't shared it until I started kind of doing the podcast and stuff. And it took me even a while to kind of share some of the stories, but I thought I might as well share mine if I'm going to ask other people to share theirs. So, so the main kind of story. My dad was a excuse me, a bit of a skeptic. He didn't really believe in a lot of stuff and things like that. He would probably come home on a Friday day, stories of prowlers and whatever else, and just tell us to like, again, stop being bad imaginations and things like that. So before my mum and dad had split up, they had this kind of almighty kind of blowout argument. Nobody else in the house at the time. I was out. One sister had kind of moved away at that point, and my other sister had been away staying with my boyfriend, and it was just me in the house. But I was out playing with my friends, and my mum and dad were having a blowout argument in the living room, and the door was closed. Dog was in the kitchen. So in the middle of the argument, the living room door burst open, and a black like mass, like don't know how to describe it, like a black ball stroke kind of just mass came in at like knee height. Door burst open and went round my dad's legs, and then went over. The story I knew to start off with, right? It went round my dad's legs and then shot over towards the settee and disappeared behind the settee. And they were looking for this thing and couldn't find anything. And my mum said all my dad kept saying was, it never had a head. It never had a head. So this
is the man who said it's all imagination.
Yeah. Totally. This thing totally like it freaked him out.
Yeah, so, it did, yeah.
Yeah, so this thing went on his legs, disappeared behind the couch, and it wasn't long after that, like the kind of split up and stuff, right? But one of the kind of interesting parts of when I was doing the podcast is like I had with one of the sightings that we'll get into a wee bit. From that, I got another sighting in Armadale, and I went to kind of pick it up. And I knew the lady, and she was friends with my mum. She actually stayed across the road for us. So I'd asked her about the story. I said, "Do you know the story of the black thing in the house?" And she goes, "Yeah, I know all about it." So the interesting thing with that story is, there's a bit. I got a bit more story for it because it was a bit of synchronistic because I was doing a kind of UFO encounter story, and then she'd heard that, and then basically contacted me on Facebook. So I've got a kind of UFO story for you. So in that town of Armadale. So that's when I went to pick it up, and I asked her the story. "Do you know about the black thing?" She goes, "Yes."
So your parents had spoke to her about this,
obviously. My mum had spoke to her about it. Yeah, they're best friends. So she said, "I never ever went back in your house after I heard the story. So I never went back in." And she said that they went to a psychic fair. My mum, I mean, there were maybe like as in people back in the day, fairs and have mediums round and things like that. And remember, you only had 4 channels on the TV that days, so sometimes even 3. So they went to a psychic fair, and the psychic was quite good. My mum didn't get taken because the woman was too busy at the time. So she invited her back on a later date. She said, "Why don't you come back and we can invite some friends up? You can maybe do a reading or a few of them." So they organised a date, and she had came through, and it was in the room where my sister had her room in there. And the woman stated, before we even get to that, when the woman came to the house, she said to my mum, she had a really, really bad feeling about the house. And she said, "How?" She goes, "Well, out the front of the house, there was 2 massive rowan trees." So 2 massive
rowan trees.
Rowan trees, yeah. So at the front of the house, rowan trees don't grow that fast, right? These are
very
massive.
old, aren't they? Ancient trees.
They were old. I mean, I used to they're probably there since the house was at the start, but they were old. I used to climb in them, and rowan trees, they don't grow fast at all. So we had 2 at the front and another one right at the back in a triangle. So there's right 2 as you walked in the gate. There was 2 at the front and then one right at the back of the back garden. So the lady medium said that rowan trees in Celtic mythology are places to ward off evil. Quite a common tree. You'll see them quite a lot of places, but just there because there's 2 prominent ones at the front of the house. And also she said she had a bad feeling about the house as well. So that was the kind of the start of it. They'd done the readings, and the lady had then said that I wouldn't normally do this, but she told her as well that the dream the guy had in the room was real. She said that wasn't a dream, he'd seen that, with the creature transforming into something. She goes, that wasn't a dream. She said that, and she also said somewhere along the lines where she wouldn't normally do this, but she wanted to tell my mum something, and she told her that my dad was having an affair. So he was having an affair when he was a long-distance lorry driver, and
that went down well.
And described them down to a T. Described the lorry, described the lady, and described a lot. And so when he came back, that was the argument that pursued, and then this thing appeared.
I see, yeah.
And she said there was another bit to it as well. She said that when that happened, the she said the story that the thing went round my dad's legs and went on the settee, and it moved that fast on the settee they couldn't discern what it was, and then it disappeared. And then they went through to the next room, and there was a foul smell in the next room, and they said in the next room next to the living room there was a horrible, she said, you called it a wee man, a small statured man, grotesque. She said, like, personification of evil. That was a word she said. And then and this thing disappeared. And my dad kind of had owned up to the fear and all that kind of stuff, and then called mum a witch because he thought it was like, how did she know all this stuff and whatever else.
You know, I'm glad you brought that back up, Chris, because you know, you think of a clairvoyant and she's contacting the other side, contacting deceased people.
Yeah.
But it's almost like we are dwelling on what happened. This woman's remote viewed. It's all, I don't know how. There's nothing about the deceased that she's talking about. She's give your mum some information.
Yeah.
From the living.
Yeah, totally. So you did that. That was the kind of story. The house. No long after that, my mum and dad had split up and moved away, and that was it. But the interesting thing as well, I asked my neighbour not too long ago, who stayed next door, and I said, "Did you ever experience anything in your house that was good?" Because we had all this weird stuff, black entities and shadow things and all that going on. And he said, no. He said, but in our last property, my sister used to see like a black thing standing at the end of the bed. So like people see these things, like families see these things, but you don't, like, these stories are kept within the family for years.
But how many people see this, Chris? Do you know, I'm not going to say who, but there's a property close to us where the person who lived in that property all their lives claimed that there was a demon in the property, and it would visit this person. I'm not going to say male or female even, on a night, and they'd be laid paralyzed. And she said it had yellow eyes and it were black. And it just used to look at her, and then she couldn't move, and then it'd be at other side. I'm not going to say it male or female, and then when she couldn't move. I'm clever, aren't I?
Yeah.
I'm not that clever, but it doesn't matter because I'm not saying who this person was, but they carried that story, you know, and this person carried that story for over 30 years with us, and it must be a terrifying thing. So how many other people are going through these things, be it some kind of trauma that's created in our own minds or something very real? I don't really know. And Les has just appeared, so that must mean that we have a few questions. Hi, Les.
Yeah, and we've got a few questions in. If you want me to fire them across,
yeah, please do.
So let's have a look then. We'll get this one out the way first. Joe Novak is asking, this is for us, Paul. How about a live truth proof at the local pub, and then we all walk on the cliffs?
I could imagine doing not at local pub. It would be fatal for Paul to go in local pub. Not just because it's local, any pub. I like beer. so we won't get on cliffs. But yeah, it'd be brilliant to do some kind of interaction on cliff tops or some woodland. Yeah, I'm game for that.
Yeah, next spring, summer, who knows where we'll get to. Okay, so that was Okay, and then I just want to address this one, what came in. So let me go, I just got to scroll. I'll just put this one. This is for us again from Frank Magnet. Has the Sunday show with Les Paul and the Rev finished?
Well, not entirely.
Not entirely, yeah. So basically, it's just a case of wear clothes at the moment. You know, with this time of year, we've been quite busy, and we have started filming again. So that's taken up quite a lot of our time. So, yeah, if you want to answer that, Paul.
Well, I think you've just about covered it. I mean, Rev's in chat now. I don't know. One of the most knowledgeable people that you will get. I mean, he comes up with great thought-provoking questions and answers to thought-provoking questions. So that's not going to end, is it, anytime soon? A great friend. So
okay,
no,
right, we'll go on some questions for Chris, I think. Let's have a look then. Here's a good one, Chris. I'll put this on the screen. John Thomas is asking, do you know of any alien abduction which involved a ghost / spirit?
Kind of hard question. I don't know. I mean, I've heard the actual witness didn't claim an abduction, but he had 3 beings continually come into his room over a period of years. But one of the interesting things was when he went back to the property to stay later on when he was a bit older. It might be a wee bit to do with this, but it's maybe slightly off topic a bit. But abduction scenario, he had 3 beings come into his room multiple times, and he used to hide for them as under the covers. They disappeared, but or something happened. Whatever happened, he didn't have a scenario, if you know what I mean. There was one eventually, right? But the interesting thing, when he moved back to that property, and his wife in later life, there was some type of creature growling in the property for months.
Growling?
Yeah. And eventually it would happen like now and again throughout the weeks, and then eventually he just lost it and then kind of shouted at it, and it eventually went. But that's the thing as well. And in that property, he said there was kind of like ghostly things happening as well. So it's just interesting how the abduction scenarios link into all this type of stuff as well. I mean, it's mad.
It kind of further points, Chris, to the fact that everything we're looking into is linked.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it really does.
So I'm sorry if I didn't answer the question correctly, but it's just the one I can remember.
Right, okay.
We've got another question from Rivington Pike Beast, Aka Lee Roscoe. Question, has Chris done any more short stories for Truth Proof, short films for ex-61-year-old Robert Taylor near Livingston? Has Chris been on location there?
Yeah, I've been there a few times, but there's lots of different stories here, and I have recorded a few. I still need to edit them and do that. But interestingly, I was recording one shortly ago, wasn't it too long ago, and was asked by the farmer if he could get my number for another story, which was quite interesting, which will come out soon, hopefully. Really interesting story. But the farmer asked me what I was doing, and I told him what I was doing, and he said, "All right, fine, you can go in the field if you want and stuff." And he said, "Look, any chance I can get your phone number off you?" And he told me a short bit of the story, and then the witness contacted me. But it's quite an interesting story, which hopefully maybe you'll hear in the
forward
future.
Potentially hearing about that in future. That'd be fabulous.
Yeah, well, I think
more will come. Yeah, if Paul and that want them up, yeah, well, I've got a few that to edit, and if they're happy to have the short stories up, yeah, I'll ping them over.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, Les is going to fire another question at us in a minute, but I want you to, after these questions, describe this location where me and you went about 3 months ago. Because it took me back a bit. It's a brilliant spot. But right, Les, more questions, please.
Yeah, well, actually, that mention of the farmer brings back memories of a farmer we came across while we were filming some section for Wolflands, Paul.
Very. And this is in Forge Valley, isn't it, Les? Is it that one?
No, the Staxton.
Good God, no! Yes. Yeah, that weren't the nicest of experiences, was it?
No,
we were right. Right, Chris, you're the guest, but we'll just do this one for 2 minutes.
Fine.
We'll not say where, but we were filming some burial mounds. A chalk road with literally 100 yards from the road, and no crops, not passing anything. And we drove on the chalk road and parked again the burial mounds. And did a bit of filming. It was great, to be honest. We'd got some really interesting footage, and we were linking things from Staxton Wold to the burial mounds to Speeton to Bempton. It was lineage. It was great. But then the farmer turned up, and he got very aggressive. It's his right. It was his land. Yeah. But we weren't damaging anything at the end of the day, and it didn't go down too well. And I was really polite, and he got really angry, didn't he? To be honest with you.
Yeah, and I think the funniest part for me was he said, "You need permission to film on here." Well, I said, "Who gives the permission?" He says, "Me." I said, well, if we ask you for permission, and are you going to give us permission?
Which
He said,
didn't help
"No."
matters.
Yes, you got to come to the house for permission. I said, we'll go to the house then and ask your permission. Can we film? He said, no.
And he did say that, Les, and I couldn't believe he'd just said it, because it poured a bit more petrol onto situation. But we left anyway, and that was the end of it.
Okay, so we'll put that one to bed, and then there's a good one for Chris. Alex Thompson is asking, Chris, what's the most strangest report of any phenomena you have been given?
The one I heard recently that I can't talk about yet. Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
And I've not heard this, so I'm looking forward to hearing about it. So
I'm not being vague. I just protect the witness now. But
no, I think it's fair to do that as well, Chris. So yeah, that's good. So short, sweet answer.
Yeah, thanks.
Short, sweet answer. But before that, probably I'd say like the old one with the black ball thing. I found that quite mad. I mean, that was an own personal story, and it made it more prominent because I knew my mum and dad on the bullshitters, basically. so sorry for swearing.
Okay, I've got a question from Andy Decodes. Welcome to the show, Andy. And the question is, has Chris had any more accounts of the Silver Man?
No, personally, no. I mean, there's one account that I got, which was on the main road. So the Silverman is in the back roads at the Bathgate Hills, and probably about 3 miles through there, or 4 miles probably. There's a main road, and next to that main road is the Bob Taylor Deckman case that somebody mentioned just a few minutes ago, which was a landed UFO. So it's no far from that area as well. But on the main road there, somebody had drove past and seen some type of cryptid creature. Like the way they said it looked like something with Bigfoot or something standing in the trees. And then they drove past and kind of thought, no, it must have just been the trees. I'm losing my mind. And they drove back and it wasn't there. So that's that. But there has been another account, the Silverman account, Mark Anderson, who does a bit of podcast with him and again as well. He picked up that account. It's somebody who was staying in the Knock car park during COVID in a van, and they apparently had a sighting of it as well. I've not got that account personally.
Right, this is going to sound. People are going to say, "Well, he's just told you." Describe the Silver Man. Are we talking about a suit? Are we talking about somebody who's glistening silver?
So the Silver Man, when we get to the story, it was if you can imagine the way it was described to me was it was a big bulky creature, right? Quite tall, quite bulky, but almost an ethereal light at the same time. So the way he described it, the kids in the car called it the Silver Man. But the witness said it wasn't silver. He said if you ever looked at an old picture, negative, and you look at the grayscale,
like kind of monochrome.
He said it was like a kind of greyish, light greyish. If you looked at somebody or a part of that colour and the all kind of brown negatives that would stand, it's a greyscale kind of thing. It was like that. He said it was solid, but it was more like a cross between an ethereal light and something else, and it ran really fast. And there was a fence, and it went through the fence.
It travelled through the fence without breaking it. It would just
yeah. Wow. An interesting story. I mean, it really is.
Absolutely. And I'm glad I asked you to describe it because, I know you've talked about it before, but I'm thinking our listeners, myself included, we're going to be thinking some silver-clad.
Yeah. The interesting thing, when they drove up, so a quick rundown of the story, when they were driving, they were basically, it was 1988, had the car, the guy was just on the shopping with his wife and kids, driving up the Bathgate Hills towards Cairn Papel, the bit we're just kind of going to talk about soon. And there was a bend in the road, and as he got to this bit of the bend in the road, this creature was knelt down inside the road. It stood up and it ran really fast. And the thing he said, it ran into the wooded line. It was like smaller kind of trees, and it done a semicircular kind of pass, and it went out of sight because he went over the hump of the hill and turned the corner. And his wife turned around to him and said, "Did you see that?" Like really, really surprised. And he turned to his wife, and before he could say anything, the kids shouted, "You've seen the Silver Man!" That's what they shouted, so that's why it got named the Silver Man.
The Silver Man.
But the funny thing is, when he said it running a semi kind of circular motion just before it went out of sight, if you go in there, that's the lay of the land, because it's like there's a big burn. You can't see it. You need to go in and walk it, and actually the land goes in and tilts right round like a semicircle, like a kind of a gradient. So if somebody's running in there, it's like a bowl, big area. It's covered in trees and grass and stuff like that. But an interesting place. And I mean, it's burial mounds here as well. That's it. Going back to what you said before, burial mounds. There's burial mounds in there.
Absolutely, it's fascinating because, I mean, obviously I've only ever been once, but when I went there, the roads are narrow. There's pull-ins. It's kind of single track in a lot of places. So I can imagine. I don't want to wish your life away, Chris, but I can imagine when you've got more time to devote to this, and you spend time and devote hours and hours in that area, you're actually going to be finding a lot of information of your own coming out of that area, because it's middle of nowhere.
Yeah, well, I told you I was taking pictures of the sunset back during COVID times. No long after I started the podcast, I'd done the Silverman story. I recorded it, and the interesting thing is with the Silverman story, which I'll kind of just jump back a wee bit to. So one of the stories I had personally, in that forest, I'd never been there before. 20 years prior, so it was after the Silverman happened, but it was 20 years prior for me. So I was like in my early 20s. I was out running, and I ran in there for the first time. And I ran through the short, kind of smaller trees, and it comes into a small, really densely wooded area at the top, where the burial mound is. Never knew there was a burial mound there at the time. I was just out running during the day, and I got to the dense bit of forest, and I got this intense fear, which not to go any further. And it was almost like being a child again and having that fear of something. That's what I always describe it as. It's like that type of feeling. And almost kind of like the Oz Factor type thing. And I hightailed it out there. I turned round, and I cut my run short, and I went home, and I told my wife. And it was the oddest thing, because I'm not scared to anything like that. I mean, I wouldn't be put off, but it was almost like a kind of thing for me to go further. When I went and interviewed the guy on location for the Silverman, it was only about 100 metres away from the spot where it happened. It was just off the road. And I was amazed at that. I mean, at that place. And it was, it's a bit of an odd place. I never found out until later on there was burial mounds there and stuff. So the story I'm getting to now, quick one. When I was up taking pictures, it was in the winter time, deep snow, and I was taking pictures of a standing stone at the end called the Clinking Stone. And I was trying to get the sunset sitting on top of it. So I was taking pictures, walked across like the farmland and jumped the fence, and I was walking back towards my car, which up the top of the road. So I was walking past the Silverman bit, and there was a couple walked out the forest, and I said to them, "Does that track take you up to the top of the hill?" Because I knew the tracks in the forest now, because I'd been in a few times after seeing the account and stuff. And they said, yeah, and they asked if they got any good pictures and stuff like that. And just had a general chat about cameras and stuff. So on my way, it was getting dark at this point. The sun's coming down. I thought I'll try and get up there and maybe get a few pictures before I go. And I turned around and said, "Oh, I better watch in case the Silverman gets me." Right? Just as an off-the-cuff remark, so I wanted to see if they'd heard the story, and that was it really. And there was a couple maybe in their mid-50s or something like that, and the lady turned around and said, "Have you seen something like?" And I could tell by the way she was looking at her husband, they had seen something. And I said, no, I said somebody else had seen something back in the 80s, just some type of creature or something like that. She was, and I could see the way they were looking at each other. I said, "Have you seen something?" And they said, "Aye." And I was expecting them to come out with a cryptid story.
Yeah.
And they said, "This is January." And they said, "Well, in October, we're coming up here in October for a walk. We'll just stay in Bathgate. We're just walking up the Bathgate Hills, just come walks here at night and stuff. A nice location." And they said they seen a large white sphere traveling in the sky and then going down the back of the hill. And disappearing. No saying it was landing at the back of the hill. It just went out of sight at the back of the hill. But they said, "Look, we know what planes look like. We stay in a flight path. We know what planes look like. This wasn't a plane. This was like a sphere. It was a white sphere." And And then the guy proceeded to tell me a story when he was younger. He said, when I was younger, I'd also seen a UFO when I was younger. He said, I must have been like 7-year-old in the area with the Bob Taylor incident as well, right? So the Bob Taylor incident happened in 79. This happened in 77. The guy said, I was kids playing out, and I seen this classic style UFO, what you would say a classic style UFO, like a 50s kind of style UFO, if you could have that. He said that it was a yellowish colour, and it was just hovering. And I was amazed at that. He said, I went and I grabbed like, another kid I was playing with, but he was a bit younger, and he just he laughed at it and then ran away. He just didn't know what he was looking at. So I went and got my brother, and my brother came along, and then it was away at that point, so I never seen it. But it was there for like a good few minutes, then the thing disappeared. So he then said, I've also seen, his wife talked about seeing an orb come out of the clouds when she was doing the dishes, right? And she says, and the words were, she says, I don't think everybody sees these things, right? I think only certain people can see them. And they weren't like, didn't look like crazy people, they looked quite sensible people, you know what I mean? And then like, I'm not saying you're crazy if you see these things, but they were genuine, giving sensible and telling the stories and stuff like that. And the guy said as well, he goes, we've seen a large black triangle over Bathgate in 2015. He said it was the size of, I can't remember the right words, either he said it was the size of an aircraft carrier or an aircraft hangar. He said it was massive, and he said it was during the day, right? And he said it even pulled the clouds. You could see it pulling the clouds as they went in the clouds. Because I have no idea how they'd seen this. Because I was searching the papers to see if anybody like had seen it. Because there's nothing there.
That kind of ties in. I'm sorry for cutting across, but his wife's already answered the question. Only certain people can see these things.
Yeah.
And they've seen a huge triangle, like you've just said, maybe as big as an aircraft carrier, aircraft hangar.
Yeah.
You know, you're not sure which one it is. Daytime. Other people must have seen it, yet nobody reports it. She's that's why she's echoing this kind of stuff, do you think?
Totally. I mean, this is like, they'd stay next to the Bathgate house. And that was like 2015, that was seen. And I'd said to him, I need to get these stories off you. I told him I had the podcast and stuff like that. And I gave him my email address. And as I was walking away, he said, the sighting when I was younger with the UFO, that's not all about what happened there. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, there's more to the story. And I said, how? And he said, well, I ended up in hospital after it. He said, I went home and I got really, really ill. And I ended up in hospital and the sick kids. And I had to get a lumbar puncture. And he said, I also got questioned and stuff like that. Because there's more to it. And I was like, I need to get these. So I went away and they never contacted me. Which I was just like, nightmare. So I went and I ran and walked the hills until I found them.
You dropped on them again, yeah?
Yeah, I got them. And it was funny because I'd go up and take pictures now and again. One day I went up and it was a nice night. And I went to Cairnpapel where we were. And a hare had came in from the east coast. It just was right thick. And the time I got there, it was right across the top of the Cairnpapel, and it was like dense fog. You couldn't see like 15, 20 metres in front of you. It was really, really, really dense. And I kind of thought, right, I'm here now. I'll just go for a walk up the road. And I walked up the road, and they came. I got to the brow of the hill, and they came over the hill, the couple. And I recognised them, and I was telling them, I basically talking to them. He told me a few other stories and just said, look, I wasn't comfortable with coming forward and telling the story. I said, well, because I will get you and talk to you a bit more. He said, but I'm not comfortable. I said, look, that's fine. So he also told me another thing, though, which came to mind for something that you were talking about. And funny thing he said, though, he said, I never believed in any paranormal stuff. He believed in UFOs. He didn't class UFOs as paranormal. He even said paranormal as like ghosts and spirits and things like that. He said, I never really believed in much paranormal stuff until I met my wife. And there was like maybe some numerous poltergeist things happening in the house. So he's no joining up the kind of UFO alien scenario with any poltergeist scenarios and anything like that. No. He's just something totally different. But he said one thing that sprung to mind when I was listening to some of your kind of stories as well. He said in the kitchen there was like a loud slap on the kitchen floor. and we turned round and there was like a 2-pence piece. It's either a 2-pence piece or a penny, I can't remember, lying on the floor, as if somebody had threw it down at a vast kind of speed without it rattling, and it just slapped on the floor.
Straight down, yeah.
Yeah. And he said that happened a few times in the house. He said, I never believed in any of that stuff until I met my wife and that. But he might have put 2 and 2 together and know that's all linked and stuff like that.
I want to ask a question, but I'm conscious that Les is still here because he's got some more questions. Yeah. So briefly, why do you think that these other intelligences do that then? Is it to give affirmation of look, we're here and believe us? Just briefly, because I know Les has got a few more questions.
I don't know. I maybe think sometimes it's maybe it's all they can do to make an acknowledgement. You know what I mean? Yep. It's like you think some of these things, it's like it's tricking you, it's teasing you, or whatever else. But maybe it's that hard to actually come through and come into here that sometimes it's just an affirmation, as they say, to actually say, right, we're here, and some people might miss it.
Yeah, thank you. That's good enough. Yeah. Right, Les.
Yeah, we've got some more questions, and I got to thank Jessica tonight for sending the questions through. Some great questions come in the chat, and here's the next one, and I think this one is very interesting. It interests me greatly. It's from Max Sue, and the question is, what do you think about reincarnation? When my daughter was 3, she used to talk about living with her other mammy. Really interesting stuff. She used to come out with it. Really interesting stuff. She used to come out with. Then she just forgot about it all.
Yeah, I find that. I mean, I believe in reincarnation, but I mean, I find like these stories, like kids probably do remember, and then they forget it. I mean, if you think of things that we do now, you have a prominent dream, and as soon as you move in the morning, it's gone, and you're trying to grab onto it sometimes, and it goes. But I mean, I think that kind of man, that's probably the same kind of thing that happens to kids. Like all these memories just go and they can't grasp them anymore. But I do believe in that. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the subject in it. I mean, there's lots and lots of stories and going around on the internet and YouTube videos about reincarnations, and some very old ones that you see on there coming back from the 1980s and from that period. And I just think when people have got these vivid memories about being reincarnated, some people don't lose these memories, do they, Chris? And I know in Maxwell's case, a daughter did forget about it, but in some others, they still have these memories going on and on and on. But and they seem to join the dots up in some of the stories, don't they?
There was an interesting story in India. There was one from Scotland actually, and there was a young boy who grew up, and he said he was a Barra boy. And they're an island called Barra in Scotland on the west coast. And this young child was adamant that he was from the island of Barra, and he could describe it, different places in it, their tea and people and things like that. And it was like amazing. And there's another interesting story that was, not going off too much on a tangent in it, but in India, and I can maybe seen this a documentary, and there was a young child who grew up, and he said he was murdered, and he could remember his family and stuff like that, and he was a prominent businessman who got murdered, and his family were still living. And he went and he could tell a lot of kind of descriptions about the family and about what happened and stuff like that. And he actually had the guy who got killed, he got shot in the back of the head, and the young boy had a birthmark. Yeah, the exact same spot that he got shot.
I mean, there's no easily. It's not easily explained away, is it, Chris? Things like that.
No, definitely not.
Okay, Paul, you disappeared there for a little while.
Yeah, I'm back now.
Again, you're back, and let's have a look. We'll come on with the next question. I'll get this question out, and then if you want to talk about other things, Paul, you can do.
Yeah, just before you get the question, then, Les, you've got a bit of footage that you want to discuss with us in next 5 or 10 minutes. We'll do the question, obviously.
Okay, here's the question then. Yeah, Frank Magnus is asking: have the panel any thoughts on Rosslyn Chapel?
I have not thoughts. I've no great knowledge of Rosslyn. I went up there. When did we meet up, Chris? Probably 3 or 4 months ago. And I know Jessica was. Yeah. And what a fabulous place. And I went because the family tree had been done, and I'd got I discovered that I've got some lineage to Rosslyn Chapel. And it was Willie Strieber that came out with that one, asked me to look into it, and I did. But yeah, fabulous place. And we actually saw something, Chris. I don't ever spoke to you about that, did I?
No, I don't think you did.
Yeah, well, I've done one of our shorts, and I'll put it up. I'll send it to Les in next day or so. Obviously, I've just been sitting on it wondering whether I should, because we went to Rosslyn and we stayed at College Hill House next door to Rosslyn Chapel. Jess will correct me, but I think it was 1666, this property. Have you seen the actual house, Chris? Do you know which one I mean?
Yeah, one next door.
What a haunted house. Even the visitor book is I don't mean full. I don't mean every entry's got a ghost story, but there's lots of entries to strange activity in that property. I never experienced anything. Mary did, and Jess did. It was providing us with questions tonight. But Rosslyn, we went for a late night walk. So, you know, the wall going up the side of Rosslyn. Frank, I realise this doesn't relate exactly to your question, but it were an experience. A light just seemed to run along the top of the wall. I don't know what time we were going. Jess might tell you time. I can't remember, and I have documented it because I put it onto GoPro, and I talked about it about 1:30 in the morning. I went back out, pouring with rain. And what makes it special for me is because I did see this light. So why does Paul Sinclair see things and other people don't? I know, because I can hear people saying it. But my son-in-law, Nick, great guy, but very, very skeptical. Everything is, if I see it, I'll believe it. Everything with Nick. Yeah. And he saw it. And I put him on the spot later. I said, well, yeah, we did. I did see a light go on the wall. I did see it move along. No idea what it was, people. But we did see something unusual at Rosslyn Chapel 3 months ago, Chris. I can't remember exact time span. But so, yeah, have the panel any thoughts on Rosslyn Chapel? Very special place. There's an atmosphere to it. It's incredible. And I'll hand it to you, Chris, because you're the guest.
Yeah. Listen, you could spend all day in there looking at the carvings and things like that. I don't know. It's an interesting place. I really think that there's potentially something underneath it in regards to things buried there. I do think there's maybe something there in regards to the way it's designed and the way, for example, when you look at all the cubes that are lined around the wee parts of the alcoves, and they've all got different symbols on them. So, and I can't remember the type is, but you can actually, with the vibration of the music and stuff like that, you can actually form shapes. I can't remember the name off the top of my head now, but all these harmonics. Shapes. So the harmonics basically cause a shape, and that's what people perceive them to be, the cubes. But there's, if you notice at the end of every one of the kind of sections, they maybe have like a cherub where like an instrument, and then you have all the cubes all the way around and stuff. So I don't know. I think maybe there's something there. I mean, definitely something there. Maybe that's something there to open something or whatever. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's an interesting thing.
It's still a small. It's a town. It's a small town.
Yeah.
And to think that, I mean, College Hill House, 1660. How far back does Rosslyn date? And we've got this
14th century. Yeah.
Sorry,
it goes back to the 14th century.
And we've got this absolutely intricately carved, ornate building in the middle of nowhere. You know, the guide that did the talk said it was created as a living Bible. That when you look at these carvings, and it's a very special place. We had Brian Allen on. You'll know about Brian, and he talked about the acoustics before Rosslyn became famous via the Da Vinci Code. And people could go in and, I don't know, perform experiments is maybe not the right word, but they could go in and work in the actual chapel. Unlike today, you're not even allowed to take photographs.
Yeah.
But they created some strange harmonics and unusual things that were happening in Rosslyn. So yeah, fabulous place, and thanks for asking the question, Frank. So right, so I'm assuming Les's departure means that we've got no more questions. Are you still okay, Chris? Are we still good to go? Yeah. So we've got a little bit of footage that you sent, and I don't know whether you want to run through it if Les wants to put that on at some. Oh, here he goes, and just you obviously tell us about it afterwards.
Yeah,
and we've reduced the sound, people, because it was quite animated.
Yes. So you can just see a light here when you're looking at that, right? But you can see there's a plane on the left-hand side there, right?
Yep.
So you can see we're on a flight path, right? So that light was just hovering there. And normally, lights in the sky, I mean, unless it's doing something erratic, it's not going to enamour me at all. Because you can't discern what it is, right? So I'm not just sharing a light in the sky, but you can see it's quite low down. You can see the background there, right? It's quite low down to the actual kind of the ridge line there. There's no even it's actually just a bank of trees in the back there. I shared another picture with Les, which is from a street Google map. And if he shares that next, you can see
the street view. Yeah.
Okay. So this is basically in the actual previous one, just a large kind of the person said it was like a large dome-shaped kind of light object hovering. So this is the area here, right? So the reason why I've kind of shared this picture and the picture previous here is you can see how low it'd be down to the ground. You can see the trees in the background there, right? It'd be really, really low. In the background, you actually seen a plane flying, right? So the plane, like the fly at a different light, that looked differently, totally, right? So this was a prominent light that hovered there for a while. There's more footage there, but that's like a kind of short snippet there, just to give you an idea. And the reason why this is quite prominent in this is back in 1994. I'll jump about a bit and just tell the story.
Yeah, just follow it.
You heard before, you probably heard the story, but this is a bit add-on to it. So back in 94, a guy called Andrew Swan was coming back from I think it was a race night, cars and stuff like that, and there was an electrical storm. So he went up to the local high school to get a better vantage point. Playing fields at the back, and it was an August night. It was getting late on, but it was still light enough where he could see things and stuff. So when he was trying to look at this lightning storm, so if you can imagine, he's looking out at the playing fields. There's nothing else apart from mossland, some trees that surround the playing fields, and then it's probably about another 5 or 6 miles until you meet the next town. So it's just kind of farmland he's looking at. So he sees it looks like to him it's either a light aircraft coming down, and he thought it was going to crash. He could see it. It just looked like a kind of square type object. He actually thought at one point he was going to land in the playing fields. It was getting that close. So it was coming towards where he was, but it didn't come far enough. That's what I'm saying. So it looked like it was going to land in the farmer's fields. So to get a better vantage point, he drove from Armadale Academy, which was the high school, into a town called Blackridge, which is just past that sign, right? That is Blackridge, that sign. So it's only a few miles away from the academy. Literally from where he went only took him like 6 minutes, right? So I've measured that. So he drove in by that sign, took the first left turn in, and done the adjacent back road along so he can come back in his cell to try and see what this object was that he's seen. He thought it was a light aircraft that came down or something. So drove along the road, couldn't see nothing, and he got halfway along this small kind of farm road, just a one single track road. Couldn't see the object anymore. And as he got closer to this point, a large object came across the top of his car, about 15 foot above his car. He actually ducked, thinking it was going to hit his car. This was a matte black, triangular type craft, right? Really, really quite big. It then proceeded to kind of pass, I'll describe it now, but pass his car, and it sat in the adjacent field, about 15 foot above the ground, just hovering, and about 100 metres away from him, or 100 feet away from him. It wasn't too far away. So you could see it, got a good look at it, you could still see it. So this thing looked like, if you imagine a Toblerone, the chocolate Toblerone you get, it was like, kind of like that, prism type shape, with the point down the way, and the flat bit on the top.
Yeah.
Right? So about 40 foot long, about 15 foot high, and about 20 foot wide at the back. And it came down to a point at the front. So I'd been back and forth with him to get the right description there, and I made a kind of slightly crude kind of artist impression here. But he actually sent me, I didn't send these pictures, but he sent me a picture of a remote control he had, right, for a TV, and it was a triangular kind of funny shape. It was, that's the nearest shape I've seen of what it looks like, this thing, but I've kind of been back and forth, and I made a kind of artist impression here. So this thing was just hovering in the field, quite a big object. So he was parked his car at this point, watching this object. He's just sitting there. I think he phones the police at this point, or he maybe phoned the police after, but he phones the police. But what happens is he's sitting watching this. It's getting a wee bit darker. He's not been there too long. He plugs in, this is 94, remember. He plugs in a halogen light. He's got one of the trigger ones that you can plug in your cigarette lighter.
Yeah.
He used to work in cars and stuff like that. He said, this light never broke, fine. Plugged it in the car. He shone the light on the object, which isn't too far away. And as soon as they did that, his light blew. Like totally blue. So he got a fright, jumped in his car, had to start his car wouldn't start. So he phones the police. The police are coming. So this object's still there, it's still sitting there. So he's starting to kind of panic, can't get his car started and stuff like that. So eventually you can see the police on the adjacent road, the road that he drove previous. You can see them there. So he phones them again and he says they say they're on their way, and he said, well, I can see them, they're on the adjacent road, the parallel road, I'm up the back road, the North Ring Road it's called. So they eventually arrive, and before the police, he says the police are driving along the road where he was, a small kind of farm, they can see them coming. He said this thing just backs out the same way it comes in and then shoots off. Doesn't he? Not at rapid speed.
So there's no front, no back, it just goes.
It just goes back out. So the thing has got a point to it on the front, but it just goes back out of the back and then just again shoots off. So the police arrive, they question him. And the funny thing with the story, like I mentioned before, is one of the guys in the police cars, it must be like the superintendent or the sergeant or whatever, they've picked him up because somebody's maybe phoned him and said, we've got this guy, he's seen that object or whatever. So there was somebody in the car that had slippers on. He was questioning him. So
it's kind of unusual, isn't it? That it's important enough for somebody to come out.
About 3 police cars turned up. So I think a police car turned up first, and another 2 turned up, and they questioned him, and they didn't breathalyze him because they thought he was lucid and they could tell he wasn't drinking or on drugs or anything like that. And you see the funny thing, the guy had a kind of conversation with him. The main guy who was talking to, had a conversation about UFOs and things like that, and what he'd seen and everything, and they did believe him. They believed him. And he said the funny thing was, one of the police officers jumped the fence and put a traffic cone in the field where this thing was sitting. He said, I never told them where I put this, where it was. I just told them it was in the field, but they put a traffic cone where this thing was sitting. I never told them.
So Chris, we've got a firm date for this and everything.
Yeah.
Have you or anybody put freedom of information request in to see whether anything's gone through to control rooms?
So we'll get to that bit in a minute. So
right, okay.
Another bit to the story. So he basically he's there for a wee while. The police actually phoned him in the AA. He's not in the AA, but they phoned the AA for him. So the AA are coming out. He's waiting with another police car. And as they were waiting, he sees another object. Another object come out, like so at this spot, right? So you're at this spot, you look over, right? You look over east and you can see Cairnpapel, right? Roughly about 4 miles away.
Right.
So he said he seen a sphere kind of object coming up the back of Cairnpapel, it then goes to the left and kind of shoots back down again. He said, I'm sure the police had seen that, but they said they didn't. But I'd seen this object. So anyway, that was another part there. He then, the AA turned up. They can't get his car started, obviously. They take it away, they take it back home. And during the night, he gets up because he's left his window down. There's an electric window he's got in the car. So he's going to cover it with a bag or something like that, because in case the rain gets in.
Yeah.
Right? So he's doing that, and his alarm chips on his car. So he basically wonders why it's chipped, because it was totally dead. Like there was no electricity in it, it was dead. So he puts the key in, starts it, and it starts. The car starts, right? So there's multiple bits of evidence with this story as well, and I always kind of it was in like one book, and I didn't have it in a documentary, but I was just kind of left after that, and it was kind of it was looked at back in the day, but it was one of the most ones that kind of interested me because the amount of kind of stuff I had with it. So you then the funny thing was as well, it ended up in the Daily Record, like the main kind of paper in Scotland at the time, and his mum and dad were on holiday, and they seen it before he told them. They seen the story, it was named and all that. It was funny because this happened at the weekend. It was in the Daily Record on a Monday. He hadn't told anybody. So it must have maybe came for the police or somebody else, maybe told his work or something. But it was in the paper like 2 or 3 days later. So the interesting thing is when there was an investigator in the day who was looking at that, a guy called John Jenkins. Have you heard of John Jenkins before?
I haven't. No.
I've tried to research who it is, but I've never really kind of found him. Anyway, but I'll go back to Andrew and try and find out. The interesting thing, in 92, right, so this is 94, in 92.
Yeah, we go back 2 years, yeah.
There was 2 guys who basically seen a UFO sighting about 15 miles away from there, right, on a back road. And they seen a kind of UFO passed under it. When they got home, they had missing time 2 hours. And they got there's this A70 case, it's called, right prominent, well-known case in Scotland, and a prominent abduction case. The guy got regressed, had a full-blown abduction scenario experience. So he kind of talked at the time. It was getting investigated. There was people kind of talking to Andrew and stuff like that. Like the guy that happened to spoke to Andrew and kind of said to him, "I wouldn't get regressed if I was you." I mean, because it ruined his life and he lost his job and stuff like that. So it kind of put Andrew off of getting regressed, and he kind of thought as well. He was like, I wasn't that fussed about it. I seemed to be like the investigators back in the day were wanting me to get regressed more for their part rather than mine. So I didn't bother doing it. But the interesting thing was the guy called John Jenkins. I'm sure that's what Andrew said his name was. He managed to get the police transcripts, and the police transcripts came through, and the times were different. So when they looked at it, the times were different, and they double checked, and it was the right times. So Andrew reckons he lost an hour and a half because he thought he'd phoned the police, let's say for example, 11:30, 12, but he hadn't phoned them until 1:30 or 2 o'clock. So he reckons he had missing time. And another thing he hadn't relayed before, but he said the funny thing is, I went to my bed that night, I had a dream, and I dreamt I was inside it. I never seen anybody. I could mind seeing flashing lights and things like that. But I could mind going in the back of it. But that was I just chalked up that dream.
Yeah.
And that was it. And the interesting thing with that, they went through trying to get stuff for the MOD. The MOD's got a letter somewhere. He's got to try and dig it out for me. But he was moving house at the time. And he said that the MOD had sent him a letter saying it was from the kind of average one is no defence significance or whatever else, or whatever that came the Boston statement. But they did say that there was 2 fighter jets in that area, and it was probably that or whatever. They did say something like that. So they say it was 2 fighter jets. Never ever seen fighter jets over here. So it's a what do you call it? It's a flight route, you know what I mean? And a lightning storm as well. I don't know. But anyway, so that was that. There's a bit of evidence here, and also other than that as well, the AA came back out and they did a full assessment of his car because they were intrigued by it. And they did a diagnostic on it, and they couldn't find anything wrong with it. And they basically said that if you've been, maybe the only way it could probably happen for it to actually concrete and come back on in that kind of nature is something to do with a really, really high electromagnetic field. It's caused it. When they say when you're near power lines or anything like that, and they said, no, there's nothing up there. So that was a kind of interesting story. That was the one in 94. It was in the papers.
Do you know, Chris, there's one thing that throughout this last hour and a half, because we're into the last, under 30 minutes now.
Yeah.
There's one location that's kind of shines throughout all of this, and it's Cairn Papel.
Yeah.
Just describe it to people, and because it don't take much to blow me away, but I was blown away when I went up there. I weren't expecting for this 360, this full panoramic views, this incredible earthwork. And once again, we've got earthworks where strange things are occurring, and we've got this place, this focal point, seems to be the hub of a lot of what's happening. So describe it to us, please.
I believe that. I mean, maybe others may not believe that, but I believe that. There's been multiple UFO reports up there in Cairn Papua. All say it's a prominent hill in just in West Lothian, the county of West Lothian. And it's got burial mounds, Neolithic burial mounds, and it's got a henge there as well. It was a wood henge. It dates back to like 5,500 years. And there's an adjacent hill just over it, roughly 3/4 of a mile away. It's no far, you can see it, you can walk to it. That's where the Silverman happened. There have been prominent UFO stories up there as well, like that one, even talking about the one with the triangle, that was in that same area. And there's been some of the towns round about there, there's been different kind of stories and things like that, and lots. But up there, it's some place. You have got like a 360 view of everything round about there. But I attribute it because there's a lot of different cases round about that area. You always get cases round about earthworks and things like that. The Bob Taylor case in Scotland, for example, that was like a landed UFO, potential abduction, police involved back in 79. That's like literally 5 miles from there. Silverman, 3/4 of a mile miles from there. There's multiple different UFO stories on other websites that happened there. There's you've got a number of different locations in Armadale, which is the next town over, which is only like 3 miles away from there. Stories there as well. There was there's loads of stuff running about the whole area. You've then got like about 10, 15 miles from there, you've got the A70 case. You've got the other direction, you go 10 miles from there, you've got Bonnybridge, or like 15 miles, you've got Bonnybridge. And people always attribute the whole Bonnybridge, Falkirk Triangle and stuff like that is there. It stretches right out to a large kind of vicinity. There was like hundreds of UFO reports back in the 90s, the late 80s, like up to the 90s. And that encompasses that whole area. It's not just Bonnybridge. A lot of kind of started there. There's interesting stories out with that, and all the kind of stories were run about, I'd say, Cairn Papua. You could probably, that's a prominent place where there's been earthworks and stuff like that. An interesting thing I found recently, which I think I'd sent you, somebody had sent me, they found it in a book, and I never even knew the book existed. There was a researcher in America, and they were writing about different phenomena and stuff like that, and they were in Scotland visiting. And I'll need to dig the book because I've got it I've not got the book, but I've got the actual bit from it. And the guy, he was somewhere in America he was from, and he visited Scotland, and they went to Cairn Papua just for a visit because it was like a kind of a place you go for on a tourist kind of route if you want to go and see the type of sites. And what he's seen is that he kept seeing a shadow of something passing over the top of him when him and his wife were walking, and it happened a few times, and he could hear it, and he was looking up, and he couldn't see nothing. And he could hear this whooshing kind of coming above him, and he put it down to some type of Thunderbird type thing that he had seen up there, or like some type of kind. He could see the shadow of it, but he couldn't see what it was doing it, and it was close to them, and it was large. And he put this down to some type of Thunderbird thing. And it's in a book, it's in an American book. I'll need to kind of dig it out because it was like funny. Because I was talking about Cairn Papua, and somebody had sent me saying, "Have you seen this?" And I hadn't seen it. Really, really interesting. But going back to the Andy Swan thing, the reason we started off with that light, and then the picture after it with the kind of building site behind it, that unknown to that person that sent me that, right? They were good enough to take the picture, take this short video of it because it was just, it stood out to them. It was above some tree line. It's actually, that tree line looks quite far away. It's no far away from that location. It's literally 3/4 of a mile away, right?
Right.
So
okay.
line of sight, for that sign to that light, another half mile or 3/4 of a mile over the back. So I've done all the triangulation here. It's exactly on the 94 sighting site.
Right.
That's what it is. You know what I mean?
So once again, we jump into location is key to these things occurring. What do you think it is? Do you think we've got some kind of thin area within that zone that's allowing this phenomena to break through?
Well, I'd be interested to if you watch Skinwalker Ranch. I'd be interested to check it with basically like what they call again. Can't remember the name of them again. Some of the kind of meters you've got to double check it. No an EMF.
Yeah, the tri-field meters, the EMF meters.
No a tri-field meter, no an EMF meter. What's the other one?
The photograph Chris Blezer's just put up
Right, okay. So this one as well, I took there's one that's after it, so before it, the picture, but I took a picture of the sunset, and this could be anything, right? So I didn't say I'm saying it's a UFO, but the interesting thing with this, when I seen the picture to start off with, I thought, is it a bird? Is it a fly? What is it? But the interesting thing, I've only gave 2 pictures here, but the sequence before it, you actually see the thing coming out of the cloud. I need to dig the rest of the pictures out there, but the actual thing came out of the cloud. And then the sun caught it when it was just going horizontal.
Just glistening.
You'll see the other picture if Les puts it up there.
Do you know, when I met you, when we met at Cairn Papel, the location you've just been talking about, I mean, we put quite a few of these shorts on for Truth Proof channel. Don't usually get any glitches with the GoPro. Really don't. Filmed you for approximately, I don't know, 15 minutes, probably more, giving us a kind of guided tour, myself and Noah, of the location. And when I got back and put it onto the computer, that 15 to 17 minutes literally goes down to 29 seconds. Yeah. It literally just that fast. I need to fire it at Les to see if there's anything we can do with it. I'm not saying there's anything paranormal there, but I've been out with it today, and I've used it loads of times before, loads of times after, but it just went a bit stupid at Cairn Papel.
Yeah, spectrum analyzer. That's what I'm thinking of. Spectrum analyzer.
Okay.
Yeah. So the spectrum analyzer, that's what I want to test there. So I want to test the spectrum analyzer because you can check in Skinwalker Ranch. They're always talking about 1.6 gigahertz, which is that signal. You can find that signal because it's a satellite signal, right? But it's when the whole spectrum rises. That's what they say. What Eric Bardon says. It's not just the signal. It's like actually, it's when the signal is transient, and also when it's the whole kind of band rises up and things like that as well. So it'd be interesting to see what it's like up there. So I'm going to test that with a spectrum analyzer and stuff like that and see where we go with it. But the interesting thing, people attribute as well like geomagnetic anomalies with phenomena as well. There's a thing in Kentucky called the Kentucky anomaly, and there are loads of different phenomena are seen in that. It's one of the kind of biggest magnetic anomalies and geomagnetic anomalies in the world. It's like in Kentucky, and these are over the world. And the funny thing is, there's one. It's like it's prominent, stands out is basically just further up past West Lothian in a big area where this one is as well. So I don't know if that's anything to do with it. I mean,
are they you're talking about magnetic anomalies?
Yeah, a geomagnetic anomaly.
Yeah. Are we talking negative or positive? You know, we've had Steve Meara on.
Positive.
We've had Steve on a few times, and he talks about positive magnetic anomalies.
Really strong, sort of like kind of one, which is quite prominent. It's literally, it probably starts about going with the NASA satellites. It probably starts maybe about 8 miles that way, and then it goes out for like miles after that. It's like
obviously, we're going to jump to Les in a moment, but you know, the area where I'm working, doing this research, it's a very strong negative magnetic anomaly.
Oh, really?
It really is, yeah. So, I don't know. But anyway, let's jump to Les. Are you okay for more questions, Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah, and some great questions in tonight. And thanks again, Jessica, for sending them through. I'm going to put this one on the screen now from James Gordon. Does Chris have spirit guards he works with?
No, not that I know it.
No, so that's
yeah,
simple.
Unless going back to the Bob Monroe thing and it's me and I don't know about it yet.
Okay, and I think this question this next question I'm going to put on kind of joins up what we talked about a little bit earlier about joining all the phenomena up together. So it's from Fred Flintstone. In the past, ufologists would steer clear of cryptids and the paranormal. In future, do you think all these topics will be included together as one single but diverse phenomenon?
Yeah, I would say yes. I mean, I've seen in recent years that there's more maybe ufologists who would just stick to nuts and bolts. Like they wouldn't even talk about abductions before. Some of them would like bypass the whole abduction scenario and just talk about nuts and bolts sightings and stuff like that. Although there's been thousands and thousands of witness testimony over the years, and then people understand the data points now, things that connect into it. So they connect things like poltergeist activity, abduction scenarios, and other kind of things that happen, and then like cryptids and things like that, or even, as we say, just talking about there, all lumped together, coming through some type of area for some reason.
I would agree. We're so limiting ourselves by, you used the word pigeonholing, or earlier at the beginning of this show, and it's multi-phenomena research, if you want to use the word research, but it's multi-phenomena. And just because we don't understand how it's connected, if we've got different types of phenomena presenting in the same areas, or presenting when there's been some kind of event of high strangeness, then we've got to acknowledge the fact that there's a connection, even if we don't understand at the moment what that connection is. Multi-phenomena research, without a doubt.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, and this one is not so much a question as a statement from Matt I81. Flying humanoid, flying cryptids, maybe what people thought were witches or vampires, maybe the Jersey Devil in America and the flying humanoids in Mexico are quite strange. Also, the Owl Man of Britain.
Yeah, I'm going to throw that at Chris. I don't want to answer it, but no disrespect, Matt. Yeah, I agree, mate. And I know we're going to get to one of Chris's questions. We're probably not going to have time about the flying cryptid, but any views, Chris?
So any views on that? Yeah, well, I mean, it was I don't know what the question was in there. I don't know if it was a comment or a question. Fine.
Yeah, it was just more or less an observation. Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose it's all about perception, Matt. And obviously, decades ago, hundreds of years ago, we would have perceived these things differently.
Yeah, sorry. Totally. I mean, it depends what people are seeing. I mean, there's a vast number of different things that people see. Like the story that I've got there, which is, it's a crazy story. I mean, it's like what the guy's seen. If you want me to relay it really quickly.
But just briefly, I mean, would a glowing flying humanoid be perceived as an angel to somebody who's of a religious disposition? Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know. It's perception. Yeah, run it past us, please, Chris. Yeah, are we okay with that, Les? You got time, or did you want to get more questions in?
Can I get some more questions in?
I'll just get this one in. I'll get two more in, actually, I think.
Okay.
Let's have a look. From Tony Worrell for Chris. Does he know if there have been any recent paranormal sightings on the A75?
A75, I'm not sure. No, that I've heard it.
Okay.
So if anybody does know, let me know.
No.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's brilliant. And this one is not a question. Let's have a look. It's just a comment from Alex Thompson. It would be great if there was someone who could come on the stream to discuss Norse mythology, Paul.
Yeah. Do a bit of digging, Alex.
Yeah.
I know you do, and and we will at this end because it's a great idea. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll. What time we've got now, guys? It's
we've got just over 10 minutes. So the flying cryptid, and obviously we want to know what information you want relaying back to you, Chris, as regards research and things in your area, because there'll be people listening who might have information. So if you want to jump to that before we get to the flying.
Yeah. Well, mainly for anybody. I mean, the reason I get into this is probably the same as yourself, is like interest, but at the same time, I know there's stories out there, and we can be confidential with the stories if need be, but it's just putting another piece to the puzzle.
Yeah.
We'll never solve this puzzle, I don't think we will, but at least it'll maybe give people a better look at a part of the puzzle, and eventually we'll get there with it. So any stories that are out there in regards to anything like that nature, even how insignificant, pass them over, because it could link into another sighting that's seen, even if it's anything. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying, Paul, where it's like you've got something that might link into another and validate somebody else's story. You know what I mean?
It just adds more meat to the bone.
Yeah, somebody might have a landing story, and then they might see somebody else make something in the sky, and so the two of them might link in dates and stuff like that. So it's always worth kind of sharing them as well.
And likewise, anybody that's got anything relating to anything I'm doing, and any accounts of the strange and unusual, please get in touch. Fire them to truthproof.uk website. I'm sure Don will pick them up, because Don invest lots of time in website for me, and I'm really appreciative of that. And yeah, all good. So let's jump to the flying cryptid. We've probably got about 5 minutes before.
So this one, it was a strange one. I mean, but I spoke to the guy, and he told me the story. So they're a place between, I'll try and go quite quickly, but a place between Stirling and Perth. And there's a few small towns up there, but he was up there on the back roads during the day, driving his wife in his car. His wife was sleeping, and he could see like a bird of prey flying, chasing something, right, coming towards. He's like over in the field, but coming towards him where he's driving. So he's driving along the road. So he sees a bird of prey chasing this thing, and to start off, he thinks it's a bag, right? He thinks it's a bag. It's only maybe about a foot and a half, or a foot wide, or something like that, right?
A bag.
A bag. He thought it was a bag to start off with. But you see, it came towards his car, and as it came towards his car, he thought he was going to. He kind of ducked because he thought it was going to hit his windshield, and it passed over the top of his car. And the car I was passing next to him slowed down as well, because they looked at it as well, but they never spoke. But he kind of thought they'd seen it as well. But what he actually seen was, he said, if you could imagine a maple leaf, right, a maple leaf, a kind of brownish kind of colour, right, about maybe a foot and a half long, foot wide, if not a wee bit wider, and in between it, he said it was like a small man. He said it looked like, the way he described it is if you've seen Groot out of Guardians of the Galaxy, it was like that, but white, a kind of a white pinky colour. He said he could see its body, its facial expressions, and its muscles on its body as it passed over. He said it actually was wincing because it thought it was going to hit the car, and at the same time, it looked surprised it was getting chased after this bird of prey. And he didn't know where to put this sighting. You know what I mean? And he came on and he told me, he said, look, I don't want to come on and outwardly relay it. People think I'm mad, kind of thing, you know what I mean? But I'm happy for you to tell the story and stuff. He said, but in that same area, we've seen numerous lights and stuff like that as well. Works up that area, and he said, I've seen lights in the sky. People at work have seen them as well. He said, but really interesting story, just be seeing this thing kind of flying towards his car. And it was like he said you could see it like a full body. He said it had like muscles and stuff like that. It was like you seen it quite close up because it was close to his windscreen.
And you describe this mass as like a leaf.
He said it was a shape of a maple leaf, but that was his wings. So you can imagine like when some of the marsupials with the things, it was like that, but it was actually. I'm
thinking of the gliding type.
Yeah. But he said it was more like a kind of star-shaped maple leaf, and this thing was a small statured man, like whitey pink colour, and he said actually, see when he's seen it, he said he's sure it was changing colour when he'd seen it as well. It's like it came out of nowhere, and this thing just started seeing it. It was almost like he thought it looked surprised because it was seen for once, and it was just about to hit the car, and the bird was chasing it.
Nothing seems to fit, Chris, does it? It's crazy, isn't it? Perhaps, I mean, last week we spoke to Mike Ward about the Mothman at Mount Pleasant, and what an interesting guy. And you think, these things you will not get reports of things like this around East Yorkshire, or we'll not get reports of things like this around where Chris is based, and here you are relaying a story. And then last week, because Chris were on, I know I'd done a bit of research, not for Chris, years before, and I'd come across this gardener get shock of his life. Bird as big as a man. Do you know what I mean? It's just nuts. Absolutely mistook eagle for an aeroplane. Bird as big, and when you actually get to read it. And it's nothing like an eagle. It's just, this thing's huge. And so these things, people have been seeing them for decades. What year was that? I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, it's odd, some of these stories. There was one Halliday told me, and it was he said the guy was an engineer, and this thing came running towards him, and it was a small statured man with a leather face.
All right.
Like a kind of leathery face. And then ran away into the woods. It was like some creature. I mean, it was the guy didn't know where to put it.
It's funny you should say that, because somebody contacted me who'd been into some of the caves in Flamborough.
Yeah.
And a lot of tourists go in. There's caves that are totally inaccessible. Yeah, I mean, even to boats, they're probably 30, 40 foot off ground, off sea level, so you're not going to get into them. But a lot of them are accessible at low tide. And this is one of the caves that were accessible at low tide. But they told me that they'd been in this cave and seen something stood with its back to them, and all its back looked like leather, and it turned around and it got a leather-looking face. And I don't think I've ever even spoke about it before, but you've just mentioned this leather-looking face, and here's Les again. So we may have a few more questions. We've literally got 4 minutes left, 6 minutes left. So hi, Les.
You're on mute.
Les, microphone, please, my friend.
We'll put that on. I think that might help. Great show tonight, as always, and thanks for coming on, Chris. I'm just going to go through. Alison Buttle is saying, brilliant to see everyone here tonight. You are all very much appreciated. Thanks for that, Alison. I've got a question I'll show this one on the screen, from Mick Park. Question for Chris: is Bonnie Bridge still active for UFOs?
Yeah, as I said before, it does stretch right over a large area, but yeah, as far as I know, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I've got one from our friend Chris Evers from the Outer Limits magazine.
Well, Chris,
if you're still with us, Chris, here's your question. It's often said the phenomena is intelligent. Do you both believe this is true, or do we say this because as humans we are incapable of explaining this conclusively? That's a
I don't know. Sometimes if you take it in an aspect where some of it might be intelligent, but if you look at the light spectrum that we can see, there might be loads and loads of other creatures out there that might not be as intelligent as us, but can see us, or might not be able to see us and might just pass through. So there could be a lot of other living things there, some intelligent, some not intelligent. And that's why maybe you might see the trickster element of things and things like that as well. So
yeah, we recently put a short on low intelligence communication, meaning these things might be out there. I'll keep it really brief, Les. But they might be out there, tapping into our emotions and our thoughts and communicating on that level, and not even being hurtful or harmful or emotional. It's just that they're just trying to communicate. I don't know.
So you can throw this one on. Andrew Sheehan, Les, can you do a shout out for a new listener, Dave, from Manchester? Well, there you go. You've got a shout out, Dave. Yeah, another great show, guys. Thank you very much for that. And first of all, and before I forget, I've got to go through all the contributions we've had tonight from the Sheepman 2020. Danny Egan says, great show, Jojo. Please, you're very much better, Paul. And,
thank you.
Joe Novak, a really interesting guest and superb show as always. And then Lee Roscoe, more money towards Wolflands too for Truth Proof. And
thank you very much.
That's really where we are with that. And let's see how much time we've got left. A couple of minutes. Can you give us a shout out for your webpage, Paul, and a bit of promotion for yourselves within 2 minutes?
I'll just make it quick. If you've got any reports you want to submit, truthproof.uk. Don will pick them up and we'll add them to the website. The books are available on Amazon, or you can get them through the website. Chris, over to you.
Yeah, you find me at the Scottish Paranormal Podcast, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. You can contact me at scottishparanormalpodcast@gmail.com.
Wow.
Excellent.
And I might just squeeze this one question in here from Jojo, actually. Chris, I stayed overlooking Loch Ness. Great spot. Sadly, never saw Nessie. But is there plenty of reported UFO activity over Loch Ness?
Yeah, interestingly, yeah. I mean, that's another kind of magnetic anomaly right there as well. Boleskine House, and about that area, Alistair Crowley. That's where he kind of stayed. Brilliant. But yeah, a few up there as well.
Yeah,
interesting area. Very interesting area.
Still active, right? That's all. That's it. That's all we can fit in tonight, guys. And sorry if I didn't ask you a question tonight. From the streams, only a couple I missed, and been a great show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chris. Really appreciated. Les, thank you. Jess, thank you. everyone in chat. I see Dean Collins in as well. Not seen Dean for a while. Great to see you, mate. And Margaret Ralph, I'll be off on the list again. Apologies.
Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah,
Thanks,
you're
Les.
welcome.
Thanks
On
for
that
the
note, on that note, it is now good night for us from us, and we'll see you all next week. We do have a stream next week, don't we, Paul?
We do. We've got an
We
incredible
do.
guest next
We've
week.
got
Thank you, Les.
great guest, and we'll announce that later on at the weekend. All right, then we're off, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.